Hi, my name is Will Kelly. I'm the monthly repair columnist for Vintage Guitar Magazine, as well as guitar builder and book author and chief bottle washer here at Hard Knocks Guitars. In this video, I'm going to show you how to take the MGB Guitars Boxter kit and build yourself a fun to play, fun to own instrument in a matter of a few hours over the span of a couple of nights. MGB provides the Boxter kit with every single piece of hardware, every screw, wire, nut, component that you're going to need to build your instrument. All you need are some simple tools and supplies, some glue, sandpaper, etc. And then some inside tips and tricks that I'm going to give you. And we'll get something really cool out of the process. So if you think you can't, you can't. It's very simple. Follow step by step my instructions, and I think you'll end up with something you'll be proud of and playing for a long time to come. So let's get started. The Boxter kit from MGB includes these four main body components which need to be glued together prior to assembly with the neck. You have a top plate, two CNC milled center sections, and then a back plate. These four items need to be glued together before you assemble them to the bolt-on neck, which is fully assembled with tuners installed, nut already slotted, and nicely installed frets. The Boxter kit from MGB Guitars includes every single piece of hardware that you're going to need to finish your instrument properly, from pickups, potentiometers, output jacks, wires, control plate covers, even the strings. You'll find every single item that you need to finish your instrument and get rocking right here in the kit, all in one. Here are some of the actual tools and supplies that you're going to need to finish your build. You're going to need four 8-inch clamps, three different types of sanding paper, 80 grit, 120 grit, and 220 grit. You're going to need some wood glue. I prefer Tight Bond. You're going to need a drill with a 6mm drill bit, as well as a 1/16 and an 1/8" drill bit. You need a small 25-watt soldering iron and some solder, an adjustable crescent wrench, a 12-inch ruler, a Phillips head screwdriver, a small punch or awl for marking screw locations. What we need to do is glue together the four body sections to create a cohesive solid box for the body of the instrument, okay? So we've got the rear plate, we've got two of these CNC machined intersections that need to be glued together, and then you've got the top. All right, now as a byproduct of the CNC process, you'll see that you'll find rough edges and splinters sort of on the laminate wood that's used here. And these, of course, need to be removed, okay? Depending on your degree of OCD or whether or not you don't care, some of these interior frayed edges, you'll never see them, so you don't really need to be as worried about them. But take a piece of 80 grit sandpaper right here and just lightly rub down all the square edges, and you'll remove all of the frazzle, the splinters and things like that from the edges. And you want to do each piece individually. Don't worry about the exterior sanding quite as much, because we're going to resand after everything's glued together. That's going to remove some of the glue that may have seeped out between the joint lines and also give it a nice, clean, flat, level edge. So we're going to glue up the four main components that comprise the body assembly. Okay. Now, it sounds pretty simple, gluing four pieces of wood together, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. Let me lay out a couple of really overriding rules that you need to follow. The first one is this: too much glue is bad, too little glue is bad. Well, how do I know the difference? Okay, what you want to do is make sure that every mated surface okay? Which, you know, would lead you to believe that you don't need to go ahead and put glue on this entire back piece, but rather just the interior pieces where the top meets the interior pieces, okay? So we're going to use our Type Bond glue. We're going to use a small brush to spread evenly, and we're going to make sure that every single surface on this has a nice uniform layer of glue. No wood showing. Now, you don't want to put too much on because when you obviously put it together and start squeezing, some of the glue is going to run out. So part of the process involves keeping a couple of damp paper towels around just to wipe off the squeeze out as you go, okay? Now, when you tend to glue large flat surfaces together like this, there tends to be a little problem with the glue acting as a lubricant and kind of making the pieces slide around a little bit as you clamp them together. So here's tip number one for making sure that that doesn't happen, and that when you glue it together and it dries, you end up with a perfect box rather than this. All right, so coarse kosher salt. If you're not Jewish, it doesn't have to be kosher, no big whoop. But what you do with this is you sprinkle a few grains of the kosher salt into the glue before you place the two pieces of wood together. And the salt acts as a kind of a lock or an abrasive to kind of keep things from sliding around. And as you clamp, and the glue eventually will dissolve the salt and actually end up with a perfect flat joint that doesn't slip or slide around. So let me show you how I apply the glue, apply the salt, assemble the four pieces together, clamp them, and then allow them to dry overnight. Here we have the top. So we're not going to apply glue to the underside of this top. Now you may want to just put bottom of the top, just so that you know you don't get it mixed out, whatever. But what we're going to do is we're going to set this aside for now. What we're really going to concern ourselves with is applying glue evenly to all four sides of this. And then we will put these together and put the top and back on them and clamp them. Okay? So make sure your glue is shook up well. Apply a thin bead. By the way, I'm also doing all this work on a piece of wax paper. This way, when you have any glue run out or whatever, it will not stick. The paper will not stick to the glue. So you'll just pull off the glue as you pull off the piece once it's dried, and then you can clean up any overspill or any squeeze out that remains from the glue. Okay, so now we've got this side glued up, and what I'm going to do is take just a little bit of kosher salt, and I'm just going to sprinkle it in some strategic corners. All right, now we're going to apply our top. You can feel, can you hear that salt crunching? Okay, now we're going to wipe off any excess on the outside, and then take this, flip it over, set it to the side. And we're going to put this back over here, and we're going to repeat the process one more time. Once again, thin layer of glue evenly applied and then brushed out. After you've done about a few hundred of these, you get really good at spreading glue around, because you spend half your life either spreading it or waiting for it to dry. That's what I always say about painting. Painting's like, I guess, being a cop these days. It's 99% boredom and 1% terror. All right. Once again, lay our salt in. Now we're not going to salt the other side, but we are going to apply another light layer of glue as well. I'm going to go ahead and put a very, very light layer here. Not too much because we don't want a bunch of goopy mess inside the cavity, because we want it all clean and neat and professional looking, right? So that's a very light layer. You can see the wood almost through it, but it is indeed covering or wetting each mating surface that we have here. Okay. Now it doesn't hurt to let your glue tack up. And what that means is that it's partially going to start sticking and curing, because that also helps with the mating process as well. It cures faster when exposed to air, but once you clamp it together, the air access to the joint is fairly restricted by the joint itself. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a damp paper towel. I'm going to clean up some of this overspill. We're going to stick it together, clamp it up, and I don't know, have a little nosh. There we go. Just going to wipe these edges real fast to get the initial squeeze out from my pressure. Now clamping. Get a little bit of glue drip out here and here. Go ahead and take care of that while it's wet. All right, so we've got these 4 8-inch clamps here. Now what you want to do is work diametrically when clamping something like this. I'm going to slide this over on its edge so that the whole assembly is flat on my work surface here. And then I'm going to put the clamp on the surface and keep it parallel while I gently tighten it. Then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to keep it flat on the surface, held together with my hand, keep the clamp flat onto the surface, parallel, and clamp it. Now I'm going to flip this over so I've got a clean surface again, and I'm going to repeat the process. Flat onto your surface with your wax paper, your parchment paper, etc. Clamp laying parallel to the surface, front and back. And that's it. Now you want to give each one of them just a separate little tug. But our box is assembled, glued up, and ready to go. Now we're going to let this sit overnight just to make sure that all the glue's dried properly before we get a chance to start sanding the edges. But it looks good. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, we've gotten our box clamped together. We've got the sides sanded flat, and we've got a nice solid body here. So the critical thing is to make sure that this neck is centered exactly on the end of this. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to show you a little trick here. If you don't have calipers, you can use a measuring tape, but the basic thing is this. We want to get the overall width right here, which is 7 inches. Or it's actually 6.98. I've sanded a little bit, but so we've got basically 6.98 or 7 inches. So half of that is going to be 3.49. Okay, so what I want to do here on this end that we're going to be drilling is we're going to mark halfway from the left side, and then we're going to turn around, take the exact same measurement, and mark halfway on the right side. that is dead center. We've measured the same distance in from both ends. So now we know vertically where to drill. Now what we need to do is figure out exactly where the hole goes. And this is fairly easy to do. All you're going to need is a good clamp to do this. So we've drawn our center line on the neck side of it. Now we're going to take our neck, place it flush on the top here, and then make sure that the bolt is lined up dead straight on that. There we go. Once we've got that, we'll put our clamp in place here. Mark that, and that is where we drill. Now we've got our hole drilled. Let's check the fit. What you really want is to make sure that the underside of this neck extension, this tongue here, is resting flush against the top, just like that. And we've got us a neck joint. Moving on. Okay, we've got the neck inserted through the bolt through the hole, and we've got the top of the neck extension clamped firmly onto the top of the instrument. Now I'm going to show you a little trick. You know, with a guitar, the neck joint and the solidity of that, the solidness of it, transmits all the sustain, all the vibration. That's the most critical juncture of this entire instrument, is this right here. So while you're more than welcome to go ahead and just leave that bolt in there and not do anything else, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pencil and lightly trace the outline of this neck tongue. And I'll show you why. Because I'm going to glue the underside of this to the top, as well as the face of this right here, as I bolt it together. So I'm going to have a completely solid set neck joint that's going to be basically, without some professional guidance, impossible to come loose again. I really want this just as solid and as firm as possible. Okay, so we're going to get our glue, and we're going to tape this off, spread our glue thinly onto here. Then I'm going to spread some glue on the inside of this face right here. Glue here, insert it in, go ahead and tighten the bolts down, and we should be good to go. Here's another little tip or trick that you might want to use. This is thread lock. This is a semi-permanent thread lock, so that it's blue colored, and it will only undo the screw with, or the bolt, with some pretty heavy wrenching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and apply some of this onto my threaded bolt, just so that the nut that we use to tighten it down won't come loose. You want to tighten this firmly, but not over tighten it to the point where the washers or the neck itself starts denting the wood. You know, you want to be very careful, and you want to make sure that you get some glue squeeze out along the joint line right here, as well as on the top right here. Check the other side. We got good squeeze out there. As long as you've got full squeeze out along the edge of the joint, we've got this tightened down with thread lock on the bolt. We've got our faces glued in, both on the top as well as the bottom. And now we wait.